First of all, for and in behalf of the province of Cebu and the Cebuanos, allow me to thank Secretary Duque, together with our other honorable secretaries, for coming over to this special session called for by our provincial board. You know, last June 15th, when I extended that invitation in the Senate hearing, and when I said that we are willing to ask the provincial board to revisit the ordinance, that was a hand extended across the chasm that divided us in the difference of protocols between Cebu and Resolution 114 of the IATF. So let me tell you, after I had studied and restudied, after I had listened as much as I could, I came upon the conclusion that economic lockdowns were not the answer. As I went around the province, let me tell you, while others chose to hide, I chose to risk myself and go around all of our towns and cities to see for myself what was really happening on the ground. And I saw the suffering. Businesses closed, jobs were lost, livelihoods were lost, people were hungry. And I told our mayors, do we have enough funds? Are we now going to spend all of our resources to buy rice and canned goods, to keep people begging us for food because they no longer could not purchase a kilo of rice? We don't have enough resources. I made that bold decision a year ago when we reopened tourism. We went around. We started when the province of Cebu was finally granted MGCQ status where tourism would be allowed. And so we started going around. Since July of last year. For Cebu City, probably MGCQ status has been on 10 months because they went back to MECQ. But the province of Cebu was never put on MECQ. Even when cases were rising in the city of Cebu, we were able to manage COVID-19. And so for the province of Cebu, we've been on MGCQ status for almost a year now. That, in spite of having opened the economy again, going to our towns, to our cities in the province, will show you an economy that is slowly starting to recover. I speak as one who is tasked to look after the welfare of millions of Cebuanos. If it were left to me alone and my family, I'd probably have decided otherwise. And I would have luxuriated in the comfort of my home, lest I be infected with the dreaded COVID-19. But you see, we are more than ordinary people. We are tasked with a duty to serve those that trusted in us. We are the elected officials of this province. And that is probably why all congressmen in the province of Cebu, practically all towns and cities in the province of Cebu, passed resolutions urging the IATF to accept the Cebu Protocol. Because we interact with the people. We listen to their plea. We know how much they are suffering. And we cannot turn a blind eye to just consider them as data and statistics. I deeply respect the models and analysis of Dr. Silvania. Being the technical advisors with such impressive resumes, I know that you take it upon yourselves with a deep sense of responsibility that the safety of Filipinos must be guaranteed and should be paramount. There was an attempt to ask the HRAC whether they are in fact following all protocols, and the expected answer came. However, reality is, from the meetings that I had conducted with the HRAC, and as admitted, they cannot always monitor these OFWs and ROFs because they lack hotel staff. I asked, do you change linens or towels within the 10-day isolation period? The answer was, well, for budget hotels, no. For the better hotels, they take out the linen and the towels, put it outside the door. They leave the clean linen outside the door too, and it's the OFW or ROF that changes the linen. Theoretically. PNP personnel that are assigned in hotels are doing exactly that. They're outside the hotels. I have had numerous statements from those that actually had to undergo this hotel isolation time, where OFWs would congregate in the rooms of other OFWs. I asked the same question. Those that were present in the meeting will confirm this. How do your staff control congregation of OFWs and ROFs? And the answer was, we can only speak through the loudspeaker because we cannot approach them. We can only monitor them on CCTV cameras. Policy is great, but that must be translated into actual reality. So my question is, if there were indeed, with all due respect to Secretary Galvez, all of these numerous regulations that we should be imposing upon hotels that are not, I'm sorry to say, that are not actually, religiously, rigidly followed, can we not impose the same regulations in our barangays, with our BHERTs, where we have PNP personnel distributed throughout all of our towns and cities? What makes a hotel room far safer and more hygienic than the strict protocols that I had defined? Executive Order number 5, February 3, 2020, as regards home quarantine. I was the first to define what home quarantine should be all about. The figures will show us, as has been presented. My executive order number 17, please flash that on the screen. The IATF came up with Resolution 95, which mandated the swab upon arrival and swab on the 5th day. Resolution number 96, which mandated taking out the swab upon arrival and swabbing on the 5th day. Resolution number 98, which now pegged it on the 6th day. And on those months, our cases steadily rose. When my executive order number 17, the graph please. When executive order number 17 was implemented on March 31st, that was when our cases started to decrease. Why? It's logic. It's simple. It doesn't even need some model or scientific analysis. When OFWs reach the hotel, they interact with hotel staff. They interact with chambermaids and all others who go home to their families. And these have not yet been tested. When these hotel staff go home to their families, they could possibly already have been infected. And so, the great infection game continues. From January until March 21 to 30, we peaked at 1,290. Take note, it was during this time when we took away the swab upon arrival protocol. From then on, it has been a steady decline when, by March 31st, we re-implemented the swab upon arrival. And so with all due respect again, to the claim of Secretary Galvez, that OFWs and ROFs are now making this a jump-off point and that they would rather prefer to come to Cebu because it's just a swab upon arrival and then when found negative, they are released on the 3rd day. May I just, as a suggestion, to ease this impasse, for after all, the provincial board ordinance applies to Cebuanos. That Cebuanos that arrive are tested and are found negative on the 3rd day shall be released to home quarantine that qualify or to designated isolation centers. May I just also respectfully inform the good secretary that we have over 2,400 beds for isolation occupants. Practically all of our towns have well-constructed, clean, hygienic isolation centers that can be designated as quarantine facilities. This is, after all, the #1 province in the entire country. Our towns can afford it. Our cities can afford it. The province can afford it. But this shall apply for Cebuanos. And to allay your fears that people from other provinces will now choose to come to Cebu, then we can continue with a 10-day quarantine in a designated hotel for non-Cebuanos. For after all, why must we keep Cebuanos in hotels? Sure, the OWA pays, for OFWs, but that's charged against the Bayanihan funds. That's not charged against OWA funds. That's still taxpayers' money. On the other hand, the ROFs will have to pay. I had thanked the President that he would try to look for funds to ease the 10-day stay in the hotel, which can cost anywhere from 25,000 to 30,000 to 50,000, depending upon the hotel. Because the ROFs have to pay standard rates. They are already in Cebu. Our mayors are well equipped to handle them, including our barangay captains. As you have repeatedly said, you admire the best practices of Cebu. Then please, allow us to do this for the Cebuanos. Let this be a compromise. The Provincial Ordinance number 4-2021, which has adopted Executive Order number 17, will apply only to Cebuanos. For the rest of those that take the Cebu route and are non-Cebuanos that need to go home to their respective provinces, we will gladly accommodate them here in our hotels, where room capacity has now expanded from 2,500 initially to possibly 3,800, or the expected final number might be 5,000. That allows us to accommodate 5,000 OFWs and ROFs for 10 days. With arrivals now still limited at 300, we would only need 3,000 rooms. We hope, though, that arrivals will be further increased. That is our request. With all due respect, please, I speak not as a doctor, I certainly am not. Not as a scientist, I certainly am not. But I speak with a deep sense of duty as an elected official, as our vice governor and board members, congressmen and mayors as well are elected officials accountable to the people who elected us. We must, in accordance with Section 17, otherwise known as the General Welfare Act, Welfare Clause, must uphold the general welfare of our people and our constituents. Allow us to take this responsibility into our hands. For we cannot govern with what-ifs. We cannot possibly hope to achieve the welfare of our constituents when it's based on models and possibilities and assumptions. What is real is, in spite of the UK variant, in spite of the P.3 variant, otherwise erroneously identified as the Central Visayas variant, in spite of all of these other variants, Cebu province continues to be on MGCQ status. We are nearing a year now, and we should even now be granted low risk. So give us this responsibility. We have taken it upon our hands. So have our congressmen. So have our vice governor and the provincial board and our mayors. We have been able to handle the very first few months where we knew nothing of this virus. We continue to handle it. We continue to manage it now that we know so much more. Honorable Secretaries and our esteemed technical advisors, I am now on my 4th term as governor of Cebu. In 2004, the Cebuanos did what had never been done before in its 400-year history, and that was to elect its first woman governor ever in this, the oldest province in the entire country. And on that first day, July 1st of 2004, the first thing that I did was to climb to the top of the Capitol. Why? Because I wanted to see on eye level words that were etched on the facade of the dome. These were words that I always looked up to. This time, I wanted to read on eye level so that my heart could fully assimilate the meaning of these words. And these words are, the authority of government emanates from the people. The authority that we possess comes from the people. Whether you be legislators or chief executives, whether you be congressmen, board members, mayors, or even governor, whatever authority that we exercise came from the people who elected us and trusted us to look after their welfare. And that is our sacred responsibility contained in our oath to serve well and to serve faithfully. And so, from the bottom of my heart, I speak and beseech the IATF. I speak to our humanity. Allow us to be responsible for the people who gave us this authority. Allow us to be able to face them and say, we are accountable to you. We will serve you with our utmost best. Mabuhay ang Cebu, mabuhay ang Pilipinas.